Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me for our third season together, my co-host, Stephen Young of RotoGrinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're previewing the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season here on Running Hot. Last year, Joey Logano was crowned champion after driving to victory lane at Phoenix Raceway. That gave him his third title of his career at just 34 years of age. Joey Logano will be a surefire Hall of Famer with 3 championships and several dozen wins under his belt. But my question to you, Stevie, is 2 parts. First, we'll start with this one first. Over or under half a win in the rest of his career for Joey Logano in terms of number of championships? So yes or no, will he win another championship in his career? He's currently 34, will be turning 35 in May.
I'd say yes. I mean, as much as I'm not a huge Joey Logano fan, but I'm a fan of what he does in a race car. So I'd say over. I think that we talk about it all the time, like 33 to like 38 is like prime NASCAR years, I feel like. So you give him going into his prime. I know he started early, but he's been around forever. But I think you got Joey for another, 8 to 15 years in a race car, at least probably 8 to 10 years. All he has to do is get it to the championship, and they're just so good every time he gets there. I mean, we saw it last year, so all he has to do is get there, and I think he'll get there a couple more times in his career. So I'll say yes. I'll say over half a title for the rest of Logano's career.
And it's going to come in an even year, obviously, because it's even year Logano, apparently. I don't know how that works, but every even year he seems to just pop off. So Stevie is saying yes. I'm going to say no, not because I don't think he can or I don't think he's good. It's just so hard to win a title in the Cup Series. We got so many good drivers, and it becomes a crapshoot in a way. And this kind of leads into my second part of the question. It becomes such a crapshoot that Joey Logano would have missed the playoffs had he not had his one win at Gateway, which was a fuel mileage win on like a bunch of crazy restarts. I mean, there was no chance he was making the playoffs. He was 15th or 16th in points. He didn't even make the round of 8 until Alex Bowman got disqualified, allowing Joey Logano to get in. So again, not an indictment on Logano himself. He took advantage of the format, but that goes to show even somebody as far back as 15th or 16th can win this championship. That's why I'm going no on Logano. So my second part of this question, Stevie, what are your thoughts on last year's championship? Just overall, the format and everything, before we head into 2025.
Yeah, see, I like the championship format. I know a lot of people, and you and I are diehard NASCAR fans for years. We've seen a bunch of different formats. I like it. I like that the season doesn't necessarily reset, but it resets enough where it's playoff time. It's not 36 races where we know the champion at race 33. So I like how it is. I mean, I think there needs to be some minor adjustments, but I don't hate the point being added for a fastest lap. I think we need to get more points in there for drivers for just running well. So like if you lead a lap or something, like a point for that, like we used to, some stuff like that. Person that leads the most laps gets 5 points and a playoff point, something along those lines where we are enhancing the drivers that are doing well during the season and not just saying, hey, you win a stage, you get a point, go out and lead the most laps, and hey, we're going to give you 5 points and a playoff point. I think that'd be something cool. I'm sure they could find a sponsor for that too. So, I mean, overall, I like the championship format. I think last year it was more of the Alex Bowman, Joey Logano thing, but I mean, rules are rules, and Joey Logano won it fair and square.
Absolutely, he did win it fair and square. I agree with you. I like the format overall. And I also agree. I think there should be some tweaks, some changes. NASCAR is not going with any changes to the championship format. The only change, like you said, in terms of points or anything is adding that point for running the fastest lap. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I would like to see some changes to the playoff structure. Nothing major, but just some tweaks here and there to make it, like you said, to where it's more of a home field advantage to run really well in the regular season than it
Yeah.
currently is. And that's what I would like to see. So that's where we are heading into 2025. Now let's talk about all the changes in 2025 before we get to our bets. We're going to kind of go through these pretty quickly since there's a lot to talk about. First, we're going to start with new driver and team combinations. First, we have to say goodbye to Stewart-Haas Racing. They have exited the sport, and their 4 charters have been dispersed to a few different places. First, we have the new Haas factory team, which is going to have Cole Custer as its driver. Custer spent the last couple years in the Xfinity Series. Previously, he did race in the Cup Series for Stewart-Haas Racing. One of the charters went to Trackhouse, and Shane Van Gisbergen is joining Trackhouse. A charter went to 2311 with Riley Herbst added as the driver there at 2311. And finally, Front Row Motorsports gets one of the charters. We're going to say that's the one where Noah Gragson, who was running Stewart-Haas Racing last year, is going over to Front Row Motorsports as that charter. Now, Front Row Motorsports has also seen the departure of Michael McDowell and Zane Smith come into the picture there. So Zane Smith is their other full-time driver, along with Todd Gillen. So that's the 3-car team there at Front Row Motorsports. Another big addition, Chase Briscoe departs Stewart-Haas Racing, again, who left the sport. And he is going over to Joe Gibbs Racing to replace the retiring Martin Truex Jr. Josh Berry moves from Stewart-Haas Racing as well into the number 21 ride at Wood Brothers Racing, where Harrison Burton leaves and is going back to the Xfinity Series. Spire making some changes. We talked about Michael McDowell departing Front Row Motorsports. He is heading to Spire Motorsports. And Justin Haley has moved from Rick Ware Racing to Spire as well. Spire now a 3-car team this year. Rick Ware going down to 1 car with Cody Ware as their full-time driver. And then at Colleague Racing, we have AJ Allmendinger and Ty Dillon making up the 2 full-time chartered rides there. So Stevie, if you have to pick one of these many changes, what do you think is the single biggest change from a betting perspective?
Chase Briscoe, and I think you'll agree. Chase Briscoe going into a JGR equipment. Toyota's been really fast with the next-gen car. Chase Briscoe's a really good race car driver on multiple different types of racetracks. You're going to hear Chase Briscoe's name a lot this year on this show, I feel like. So I think that's the biggest one. Not that Martin Truex Jr. was not, a future Hall of Famer. But I feel like Martin Truex Jr. kind of struggled with the next-gen car. And we saw that, we see a lot of speed out of Truex, and they weren't making the right adjustments to his race car throughout the race, and we'd see him run top 3, and then, hey, Martin Truex Jr. is 12th, kind of thing. So I think Chase Briscoe is going to win multiple races this year with JGR, so I think he's the biggest one. And then SVG. We still have plenty of road course races. We have short tracks. He kind of held his own in the Clash last weekend. So I think those are the 2 biggest ones to watch from a betting perspective. Obviously, you get some long shot stuff with some of this other stuff, but those are the 2 coming into the race season that I have circled and that I wanted to bring up on the show.
I think another one that might be underrated for me is Josh Berry to Wood Brothers Racing. We've seen when you put good drivers in that Wood Brothers equipment, they can get stuff done, right? Ryan Blaney winning for Wood Brothers Racing. They have that Penske affiliation. We know how good Penske is at the shorter, flatter tracks, and that's a track type that really suits Josh Berry very well. I wouldn't be surprised to see Josh Berry in Victory Lane this year at a shorter, flatter track with that Penske affiliation at Wood Brothers Racing. So I want to give a kind of an honorable mention, but I definitely agree with you. The biggest one, of course, is Chase Briscoe. Thoughts on Berry real quick?
No, I love that call. And Wood Brothers always has speed on the bigger racetracks too. We obviously, like, Harrison Burton won last year at a super speedway. So you're adding in another aspect for Josh Berry. I like the Josh Berry thing. I'm like, I want Noah Gragson to take the next step this year because I feel like this is his 3rd season now, and we know how good Noah is. Like, we saw him absolutely dominate in Xfinity on multiple different types of racetracks. So I'm excited for Gragson this year. Last year we saw that Front Row Motorsports took the next step as a team. with Michael McDowell. Todd Gillen had some speed last year, so I think good opportunity potentially for Noah Gragson. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for Barry too. I'm excited to have more competitive cars just overall. I feel like Stuart Haas last year kind of threw in the towel very
Yep.
early in the season, and I think all those guys, Gregson, even Ryan Priest, Ryan Priest going over to Roush Fenway, like that's another one that's huge. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of potential this year.
Yeah, I totally left that one off. Good call out there. Ryan Priest going to RFK Racing as well, joining Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher in what is now a 3-car team. And shout out to the growth of these teams as well, right? Front Row Motorsports going to 3 cars, 2311 to 3 cars, Trackhouse to 3 cars. We have Spire going to 3 cars. This is huge in that, yes, we lost one team, but we have seen 4 or 5 teams grow from this. So it is definitely, a sign of good things in this sport. Now, speaking of what we talked about earlier with the championship format, how there isn't any changes, there are some changes this year, some rule changes. The first one being the open exemption provisional. And what that is a team can run an extra car if they give NASCAR notification ahead of time that they want to run an exceptional driver from another series. So we're seeing that being put to good use with Helio Castroneves, 4-time Indy 500 winner. Helio Castroneves is going to run the Daytona 500 for Trackhouse Racing. Also, the damaged vehicle policy. You can spend time on pit road, up to 8 minutes, I believe it is, working on your car. And if that time expires, you're no longer out of the race. You just have to take the car to the garage where you can continue working on the car. So that's definitely an interesting development there. There's no, if the 5 or 6 minutes are up as it used to be, you're out of the race. Now you just have to roll the car back to the garage to finish your repairs, and then you can come back out onto the track. Also, there is a change to the waivers for drivers that miss races. You can still be issued a waiver for lots of different reasons, but you will have your playoff points taken away if it's for any other reason than a medical reason, like you suffer an injury, especially in the race car, or family reasons, birth of a child, family emergency, those kinds of things. So any other reason, for example, Kyle Larson missing the Coca-Cola 600 because he flew back from the Indy 500 and that race ran too long, that would be a reason that would cause you to lose all your playoff points. So that is one thing there with the waiver changes. Also, we have OEM violation penalties. Now, we've definitely seen some interesting, funny business from the manufacturers over the years. And so rules violations by an OEM may now result in a loss of manufacturer points or wind tunnel hours, other kinds of penalties there as well. And finally, the fastest lap point, as you were talking about, Stevie, the driver that runs the fastest lap in the race will get 1 point added to their point total. So of all of these changes, Stevie, do any of these, some of these affect betting?
I mean, DVP at super speedways, I think affects it potentially. Like we could, have a driver that gets into a wreck, spends 8 minutes, goes back into the pits for a few minutes and fixes the issue, right? And comes back out. So I feel like probably affects fantasy more than betting. I
Sure.
love the provisional for what it's worth. I think that is awesome. Like let's put as many eyes on the sport as possible. If Helio
Yes.
wants to come run, if any of those F1 guys want to come run, like why not? Like, it doesn't hurt NASCAR to run a 41 car field. The cars are better nowadays than they were.
Mm-hmm.
So the playoff waiver change, good. OEM violations, good. That those both needed to just kind of be a thing. So, yeah, I mean, overall, the DVP was great when we were running the old generation car because, I mean, guys would go out there and run with tape on the car and everything broken, and we'd get 15 cautions because, drivers couldn't or teams couldn't fix things. And DVP now with the new car, I mean, let's give these guys time to, fix issues that need to be fixed. I mean, these cars, if you break them, they break. So you're not going back out on the racetrack. It also allows maybe a little bit of testing. I think they should have maybe implemented something with the DVP where if you're like 15 laps down or something, you have to kind of move over if you're in the way or something along those lines. But I feel like that's just kind of racing 101, and we won't have any of those issues. But yeah, I mean, overall, I like a lot of these changes. I mean, the OEM change, I think, is one of the biggest ones when it comes to late in the season. I don't think it really affects anything right now. And I loved Twitter with all the fastest lap conversations. Like, had they just put this in at the end of the year, it wouldn't have changed anything. But hey, we have a fastest lap. We're going to pit with 5 laps to go, put new tires on, and go out and try to. You're not going to give up 10 to 20 spots to try to go get a point. I mean, if you're 15 laps down or something, maybe. But yeah, I mean, overall, I don't think the fastest lap really changes much from a betting or fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I was talking about that in the Action Network Discord. I was saying the only way that's going to come into play at the end of a race is if maybe we have something like the option tire race and you pit with 15 or 20 to go where you have enough time to make all that back up on track. Or if you're literally just, a few laps down and you're on your own lap, right? Nobody else is on that lap with you. You can just pit, get fresh tires, try to get the race fastest lap because you won't lose any positions. Other than that, yeah, we're not really going to see people specifically going for that outside of a couple, like I said, very specific scenarios. I think the OEM violations one is interesting. We saw the shenanigans a little bit at the end of the year with the manufacturers. We saw some penalties to certain drivers. So hopefully, there's no tanking in certain situations to help a teammate, things like that gets eliminated because that could affect betting, right? If your driver tanks and you had him for a top 10 bet, that's one spot that, I think might hopefully be, I wouldn't say put to bed, but the chances of the shenanigans get reduced a little bit with those penalties. Also, Stevie, we have a NASCAR in-season tournament this year. I know this is going to be a big thing that we'll be focusing on at Action Network as far as the betting. What are your thoughts on this in-season tournament?
Love it. I mean, you and I are huge fans of this when we started doing it. What was it, 2 years ago with Denny Hamlin or whatever? Yes, let's do it. I mean, let's add some value to the middle of the season. I talked a lot about this with the NBA in-season tournament. It's fantastic. Let's add some excitement into a dull part of the schedule. So, yeah, I'm all for the in-season tournament. I think it's going to be great. It starts at Atlanta, right? Like, isn't it Atlanta?
Yeah.
Atlanta, Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a multi-race tournament, 8 races, and we're going to go from 32 drivers down to 1. It's going to be head-to-heads. The 32 drivers will be chosen by the point standings in the regular season by the time we get to there at Atlanta, and all of those races are going to be on Amazon Prime Video, so it's going to be really cool. I'm sure the sports books will have all the head-to-head matchups between the drivers in the tournament. Definitely will be something we'll be focused on betting on this podcast and at Action Network. Finally, some schedule changes. NASCAR going to Mexico to race there on the road course in Mexico. So that's going to be cool. We're getting a little international flavor at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City. Then COTA, a little bit of a layout change. They're cutting off part of the track there, so it'll be a bit of a shorter road course, which will make caution laps not as long and dreadful. And then also the playoff schedule has been adjusted. Lots of different changes in terms of like which races went in and which races went out of the playoffs. So round of 16, Darlington, Gateway, Bristol. Round of 12, New Hampshire, Kansas, Charlotte. Round of 8, Vegas, Talladega, Martinsville, and championship race still at Phoenix. I think for me, Stevie, the big one on the schedule change is that round of 8. We no longer have Talladega and the Roval, 2 kind of wild card races in the same round. I thought that was a little bit too much last year. But Stevie, I think it's time to get some bets, right?
Yeah, let's do it. I feel like the biggest one is like what you said. So yeah, I'm with you. Let's talk some bets.
Absolutely. It is time to dive into the bets. We're going to be going with a little bit of a new format this year as we drive through a race or in this case, the season stage by stage. Stevie and I will give a pick in stage 1 as our shorter odds bet. Then we'll give another pick in stage 2 as our longer odds bet. Finally, we'll wrap up that third stage in victory lane where we're going to give our combined favorite bet. So it's time to throw the green flag on the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season and fire off for stage 1. All right, Stevie, start us off with your stage 1 pick.
Yeah, I'm going to go to a guy that I've bet the under, I feel like, the last couple years. And now I'm going to flip gears because I just like the line. So it's Chase Elliott over 1.5 wins, minus 140. Got to pay the juice on this one, but that's what we're kind of doing here in turn 1. We're, shorter odd bet kind of thing that we really like. And that's what I really like with Chase Elliott is, he finished the season really good. He started the season really good. And with Hendrick, you just never know what they're doing in the summers, but the fact that he finished so good, he was 4th in speed over the last 10 races of 2024. He finished top 5 in 3 of those last 5 races on 3 different types of racetracks. We know that Chase is capable of winning at multiple types of tracks. We talk about it all the time. Short flats, road courses, 1.5s with the Hendrick speed. He can win at Daytona and Talladega, Atlanta. So when you're looking and you're factoring everything in, 1.5 just seems low. We bet the under on 3.5 right, as he got hurt. So 2 win difference. I think Chase Elliott and Hendrick Motorsports is going to have a big year. So I'm taking the over on 1.5 wins for Chase this year.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I remember, we'd had it under 3.5, but I also took his over 1.5 last year, and that did not hit. So unfortunately, it didn't hit. But I agree. He's full year removed now, more than a full year removed from his injuries, and looked really strong at the end of the year. Started off this season with a win at the Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium. So yeah, Chase Elliott over 1.5 wins at minus 140. Stage 1 pick. I like that one. For my stage 1 pick, we're going to head over to Caesars Sportsbook, and I am going to take Toyota to have over 9.5 wins. And this one's just kind of a math, situation here, Stevie. The math ain't mathin'. Toyota, right? There's 3 teams. There is Joe Gibbs Racing, 2311, and Legacy Motor Club. Well, Joe Gibbs Racing, their team win total line is 8.5 wins. Yeah, it's minus 135 juice to the under. So, the expectation is around 8 wins. 2311's line is 4.5 wins with minus 160 the under. So the expectation there is 3.5, 4 wins. So if you add those up, 8 plus 3.5, let's say 4 wins, that's 11 and a half. If my math's right there. So 11 and a half is what the 2 team lines are for Joe Gibbs Racing, 2311, but Toyota is 9.5. Then you also get to add in Legacy Motor Club. There's some probability, right? Eric Jones or John Hunter Nemechek could win a race, especially at a track like a Daytona or a Talladega. We've seen Eric Jones run really well, especially at the super speedways. And John Hunter Nemechek, honestly, has had some very good finishes at the super speedways. So I'm taking Toyota over 9.5 wins. You just look at the individual team lines and it's not adding up. Toyota had 9 wins last year, but that came with 0 wins from Bubba Wallace, 0 wins from Ty Gibbs, 0 good wins from Martin Truex Jr., and 0 wins from Legacy Motor Club. Now you have, I think you got to get a win from one of these, right? Especially what I would say is Truex, where Briscoe is replacing Truex. Briscoe had 1 win last year with Stewart-Haas Racing. Now he upgrades his equipment massively. You got to have, probably expectation of a couple Briscoe wins there. Ty Gibbs should probably get a win at some point. Bubba Wallace should probably get a win at some point. Riley Herbst, you add him to the 2311 fold. That's another out on super speedways, especially Riley Herbst, a very good super speedway driver. So I think this line is just too low. 9.5 wins, minus 130 at Caesars, Stevie.
Well, I'm gonna piggyback in this with my next pick. So I'm right there with you. I feel like you're gonna get multiple wins this year from Gibbs, and I think you're gonna get multiple wins from Briscoe. I already said it earlier. So even if you take like a win away from maybe Denny Hamlin this year, you're still getting. I think you're getting multiple Reddick wins, multiple wins from Gibbs. Denny's gonna win multiple races. Like, I'm with you on this one. I like this one a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And, Christopher Bell, one of the top championship contenders. So,
Yeah.
you probably expect 3, 4, 5 wins from him as well. I think this line is just too low for 9.5 wins for Toyota. So, recapping stage one, Stevie, Chase Elliott over 1.5 wins on the season. For me, I'm going Toyota over 9.5 wins on the season. So that is the green and white checkers on stage one. We're going to get fueled up. We got our fresh tires, and let's fire off for stage two. All right, second stage, Stevie, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the championship winning manufacturer, Toyota plus 155. I'm just going to bet it every year. I mean, I said this last year. I bet it last year. I'm going to say it again. Hamlin, Bell, and now Briscoe are all so strong at Phoenix. We saw 2311 take, huge steps forward in 2024. I think Bell, Hamlin, Briscoe, Gibbs, Reddick, Wallace all win at least one regular season race. So, we're putting a lot of cars potentially in the playoffs there. And now, like you said, we don't have 2 wild cards in a round anymore. We're going to see a stouter field progress through the playoffs this year because we don't have those 2 wild cards together. So, I mean, it's been, 2019 since Toyota has won a championship, but I think these odds with the addition of Chase Briscoe, I think Briscoe's a huge upgrade. No offense to Martin Truex Jr. Like I said earlier in the show, Briscoe with the next-gen car, I think, is an upgrade. If we would have gone back 3 years, Martin Truex Jr. would still be in this car because he was just so dominant with that old generation car. So I think you're going to see multiple wins, and I think if you get Bell, Hamlin, Briscoe, Reddick, any of those guys to Phoenix this year, you're going to have a chance to win. So plus 155 for the winning manufacturer Toyota. I like this more than betting like Hamlin and Bell's like outright lines. I'm not showing a ton of value on their outright lines, so I bet this one instead.
Yeah, Toyota just has so many strong drivers. You mentioned it. Bell, Hamlin, Briscoe, Reddick, Ty Gibbs. Those 5 right there all could contend for the championship. Bubba Wallace probably not a championship contender, but definitely a race winning contender. I think he's around 60-1 at sportsbooks to win the championship. So still better than a 1% chance, but yeah, you're really looking at those big 5 there, the 4 Gibbs drivers plus Tyler Reddick from 2311, and it's going to be tough to compete against those guys, especially at Phoenix. Team Penske's very good at Phoenix, but Team Penske still needs to get a driver to Phoenix, and they only have 2 that are really capable of doing that in Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano. So just by a numbers game, you might end up crowding out Penske with just Chevys and Toyotas. And then in that case, if you do that, I really like Toyota's chances there. For my second pick here in stage 2, look, I love this team. I'm wearing my Todd Gilliland hoodie that I have right now, but I'm taking Front Row Motorsports under half a win. You can get that plus 115 at Caesars Sportsbook. I love this team. I said I love it. Like, Todd Gilliland is my favorite driver. I really like Zane Smith. I bet Zane Smith, at Vegas, first Vegas race last year, he hit the wall on lap 4, but I got Zane Smith merch at Vegas. Noah Gragson is a Vegas guy, right? I love Front Row Motorsports, but I'm taking them under half a win. It's tough to see them winning if they don't win at a super speedway. Zane Smith just hasn't quite been a race winning contender yet. It's probably a lateral, maybe a slight upgrade going from Spire to Front Row Motorsports for Zane Smith, but hasn't really contended for any wins. Similar for Todd Gilliland, just not contending for wins. He does run now the flagship number 34 car that Michael McDowell ran, but McDowell was only really competitive at super speedways and road courses in terms of race wins as well. Certainly he could get top 10 finishes, but he wasn't really pushing into that top 5 frequently enough to where you'd feel comfortable getting a win. Gregson's kind of the wild card, as we talked about, Stevie. I want to see him, take that leap forward, but again, is the equipment holding him back here? And then if we look at the drafting track races, there are 6 of them, and there's 3 drivers, right? So there's 18 opportunities for one of these guys to win at a drafting track. But just looking at my models of these guys' expected win probabilities, I'm going to be generous and say, let's give each of them a 2% chance to win each race. So that means a 98% chance that they don't win the race. If you do 98% raised to the 18th power, right, which is 6 races times 3 drivers, that gives you 69.5% to not win a race this year. So let's say 70% chance they don't win a race at a drafting track. Then they would need to have just a 23.5% chance to win a race anywhere else to make this a bad bet. But I don't give them a 23.5% chance to win a race anywhere else this year. I think it's probably closer to 5 to 10% maybe that they win a race anywhere else. So I'm going to take Front Row Motorsports with the mathematical evaluation there, under half a win plus 115.
Yeah, I mean, you're not sweating Mike McDowell at road courses anymore. You know, Todd Gilliland is good on shorts. He's good on road courses. But I think your biggest sweat outside of the super speedways is going to be Homestead with Noah Gragson. I think that Noah is very, very good at Homestead. And I think, like, if you're that team, you're putting everything into winning that race. So whatever sponsors that you have that you can bring the best engine and the best car to any racetrack, that's where you're going. I think if you're Noah Gragson. So I think that's your biggest sweat, and you'll know in March. You'll know early if you get past your biggest sweat outside of the super speedways with this bet.
Yeah, exactly. So, definitely going to be sweating the super speedways. And hey, I'm rooting for Todd Gilliland to win the Daytona 500, right? I already bet him preseason. If you've been following in the Action app, 75-1. So I hope this bet loses at Daytona, because I'll win a lot more if Todd Gilliland wins the Daytona 500 than I'll win just on this season long bet. But there's the natural hedge. Both bets can be plus EV. That 2%. Right, that I'm given about ballpark Todd Gilliland to win Daytona 500 is better than 75-1 odds. It's closer to like 50-1. So, I like the Todd Gilliland Daytona bet, but at the same time, the season long bet, I'm still showing value on that under half a win. So we completed stage 2, and for stage 3, we've also finished that one up. So we're going to wind up here in Victory Lane with our combined Victory Lane pick on the 2025 season. Stevie, what do we have as our Victory Lane pick?
We have value. That's what we have. Oh, yeah. We got Kyle Larson over 4.5 wins. It's minus 135 at BetMGM. If you look on a lot of books, I would say probably 90% of them, this is at 5.5. So if you're watching this show or listening to this show and you like this, go bet it right now on BetMGM, because it's not going to be up very long. I mean, we get the most talented stock car driver in the entire world at every single racetrack. He's fast. Every single weekend they bring a fast race car. Kyle Larson is the best driver in NASCAR, and I'll argue that with anybody. Currently, right now, Kyle Larson is the best. So I think you're just taking the odds of him winning multiple races really early. I think that he's going to be a playoff contender. He's going to be a championship contender. I think you're just taking the value at 4.5 here and betting the over. Because, I mean, I can't believe it's 4.5, to be honest with you. Like, I was shocked when you messaged me about this, because I was like, wow, all right. So, yeah, I mean, I could read off all the stats. I don't have to. If you are a fan of motorsports, if you watch or, listen to this show anytime, you know that Kyle Larson is always brought up because he's a favorite almost every single weekend. Kyle Larson over 4.5 wins. That's our Victory Lane pick, and I'll let Nick Matthew hear a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's just add up Kyle Larson's wins since he joined Hendrick Motorsports. 2021, 10 wins. 2022, only 3, but it was the first year of the next-gen car, right? A lot of teams were trying to get a handle on it. 2022. 2023, he had 4 wins, so increasing that win total as teams get more familiar with the next-gen car. And then last year, 6 wins. So by my math, 10 plus 3 is 13, plus 4 is 17, plus 6 is 23. 23 in a 4-year period. That's pretty much 6 per year, a little less than 6 per year. So you got to go over 4.5. He's cleared it in 2 of the 4 years, but this is the thing that happens when you introduce a new car. It kind of levels the playing field, and that's what we saw in 2022. We saw a ton of different winners. We saw drivers winning that we weren't expecting. But as time goes on, those bigger teams get a better and better handle on the car, and you start to separate, the cream rises to the top, I think you're going to see another 6, 7, 8 win year from Kyle Larson as these bigger teams get a handle on this car. They're now into year 4 of the next gen car. So, and we saw it with Kyle Larson with Hendrick Motorsports in 2021, right? It was the final year of the Gen 6 car, and 10 wins. I mean, just absolutely dominant, right? So I think this is just a trend that's going to continue. 3 wins, 4 wins, 6 wins. You might see another 6, 7 win season here from Kyle Larson. So that is our victory lane pick, but don't go yet. We have one more pick to make. It's not a bet, but Stevie, we need your championship driver for 2025. Who are you picking to win the Cup?
Same guy I picked last year. I'm going to go back to Seabell. If he gets to Phoenix, he has an awesome opportunity. He was one of the best at Phoenix last year in both races. So yeah, I'm going to go Christopher Bell. I almost said Denny Hamlin just because I want Denny Hamlin to win a championship, because I think Denny Hamlin is one of the best drivers of all time, and I hate the argument of, oh, he doesn't have a championship. Who cares? I do care. I'm sure Denny cares a lot, but I feel like Christopher Bell's here. I almost said Chase Elliott. That is how high I am on Hendrick Motorsports this year. I think Hendrick Motorsports is going to take a huge, like you said, it's the 3rd year of the next gen car. They're going to be really fast.
Year, yeah.
Fourth year. Yeah, they're going to be really fast everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the Christopher Bell call. If he gets to Phoenix, it is going to be damn hard to beat him. Absolutely dominated both Phoenix races last year, and won the first one, didn't win the second one, but led the most laps, which was the championship race. And he wasn't even one of the championship drivers there in contention, because he didn't make it to the final 4 in the playoffs. But if he does, yeah, I like that. And the only reason I'm going different is to go different, because I probably would pick Christopher Bell as well. But I'm going to say Kyle Larson. We just talked about it. 6 wins last year. This team is going to just continue to dominate, and Kyle Larson, best driver on the planet, as you mentioned, at least the best driver in NASCAR by far. To me, arguably the best driver on the planet. I know, Max Verstappen's out there, things like that, but Kyle Larson can get in any car and run anything. He's running the Indy 500 again. And so I'm excited to see him do that. You know me, I'm a huge IndyCar guy, and having Kyle Larson do that crossover is massive for IndyCar as well. And yes, there will be a running hot for the Indy 500, but Kyle Larson, my pick to win the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series championship and grab his 2nd career championship. So that is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season preview episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. We'll be back next week to talk bets for the big one, the Daytona 500. We'll be recording before the duels as well, so we may have some bets for the duels. It's going to be probably our longest episode of the season because it's Daytona, right? It's one of the best races. I'm sure we'll have multiple bets. We'll probably we might do away with the format that we used on this show, and then we'll bring it back for the following races, just because Daytona is such a special event. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.